Hurling on Off the Ball.
With Board Gosh Energy. Hurling. It's anyone's game.
All right, delighted to be joined on the line by Anthony Nash. How are you keeping, Anthony?
All good, yeah. Great
You're
stuff.
here to represent the poor, downtrodden hurling community of Ireland.
Oh, stop, will you? Jesus Christ.
Listen, this is a prime time slot, but you've only got 5 minutes. We want to talk about football, okay?
Exactly.
The good stuff,
exactly.
the really good stuff that people are really interested in.
Yeah, exactly. We're the poor, poor us.
What have you made of it all?
Yeah, look, it's, do you know what? No, for those that saw the game, we won't go into too much. For those that saw the game between Cork and Tipp, I thought it was exactly what the hurling season needed. Just that shot in the arm. Munster's still in the melting pot like as well. So I know football is getting the limelight and everything like that, but I still think there's a lot more to come on the hurling side.
It doesn't really get all the limelight though, does it? Like, there is no more storied tournament than the Munster Hurling Championship.
Yeah, fair point, yeah. I think later on, like when you get to is it Super 8 now called the football and stuff like that, like that's when it'll really kick off, like, and you see the draws being made for that in as well, so that'll bring its excitement. Munster Hurling Championship, though, you know, is ever since I started, like ever since I started supporting Limerick, ironically, when I was growing up, but it's been unbelievable. Like, it's always been, you know, anyone could win it. I know Limerick's dominance over the last few years as well, but like, it's just, for us down here, it was always just get out of Munster. It wasn't about, your first job was just get out of there, like, and then if you can make a Munster final and win it, all the better. But since the round robin, or since that league thing come in, like, you know, it's just get out if you can in the top three, and it's almost a breath of fresh air when you do get out of it.
The greater point of what's gone on over the last week and the story that's just exploded about GAA Go obviously started with Donlow Cusack on the Sunday game talking about hurling, and that Croke Park, the GAA, were shrinking the game and they were exploiting hurling essentially by putting these games on GAA Go. When you look at where hurling is now and the amount of counties that are competitive at the top level compared to even when you started out in the game, like, do you feel that hurling is shrinking? Do you feel that when you look around the country that instead of making progress and instead of it being the greatest game in the world that's been flourishing all over the country, that actually in these strongholds that have always been there, yeah, it's still, but you look at what's happened in Offaly over the last 15, 20 years and nobody's really stepped up to replace them.
That's the perfect example for me. Like, I did a piece for the 42 this week, and the first line was, if I threw stones, I'd hit glass quickly, because I worked for Sky Sports last year and the year before. So, like, this whole paywall and, you know, pay to watch and stuff like that, like, you know, look, I believe it's probably here to stay for a certain degree. It's just how it's kind of used and stuff. And I suppose with the Cork and Tipp game not being available to the whole country, it was a shame. You know, but then, as I said, look, people will come in and say, who the hell is he talking when he worked for Sky Sports? But I think what Donlow, I think there is a huge argument for what he's saying. Like, what have we, like 8 teams maybe that can win an All-Ireland, you know, maybe if you were kind of even at that, or you even got 8 teams that could win an All-Ireland. And you see, I always get asked questions about hurling, and my answer is always the same, and it's boring. If it's better for the game, then drive on. And what I'm always trying to do is try and promote hurling in the counties like the Offaly's. Get Offaly back up. We need the likes of Offaly. We need more teams coming back. Like, when I was, like, unfortunately, like, my two uncles played for Limerick in 94 and 96, like, they lost to Wexford and Offaly in the All-Ireland finals. And, like, Offaly then were obviously going well till the late 90s and stuff, and then just, unfortunately, it's a county that's just seemed to be in I wouldn't even say transition. You know, Michael Fenley did try and do a good job, but we need Offaly. We need every county. We need Dublin going stronger than they are even, you know, to try and make it as competitive as we can. We need 10 teams that can really compete in their provinces, because I fell into the trap last year of Munster's competition is better than Leinster's, and I believe that because of the competitive nature. But I fell into the trap by saying Munster Hurling was better than Leinster Hurling, and then Kilkenny come out and prove that, you know, they're the second best team in the country, and still could argue that case, you know what I mean? But definitely, if you look at what Munster has compared to Leinster, I definitely think the competitive nature of that, Leinster needs to get stronger. We need Offaly back. We need, you know, even if Antrim could take that next step, and if Dublin could take that next step, and Wexford to maintain what they had the last few years, you know, it would be fantastic.
And do you think Croke Park, whatever Croke Park is, want Dublin to take that next step? Do you think they're doing all they can to make sure that Dublin hurling takes that next step?
I don't know the ins and outs of Dublin hurling. You always get baffled about, the money up there. Look, it's It's a huge county. They have huge sponsorship, and if they have money to get it, brilliant, bring it. Do you know what I mean? Like, people are afraid that Dublin might come along and take over like they did in football. But until that stage, you should be trying to do everything to get the levels of hurling up. Like, they're potentially one of the best managers in the country up there at the moment. I was delighted when I heard his appointment because, I feel like they're going to learn an awful lot from him, and he's All-Ireland winning credentials. But whether it's Croke Park or whether it's Dublin or whether the talent is there or not, that's the question. Like in 2014, we were haunted to get to the All-Ireland final over Anthony Daly's team when Ryan O'Dwyer was sent off, and next thing all of a sudden, I know they were pushing in Leinster and stuff since, but have they really taken that step? And I'd say it's nothing to want to try, but GAA hurling need Dublin anthems, Offaly's and these to even kick on,
Well, they need some leadership as well because, listen, the can't see it, can't be it angle of this is most definitely true. And, I heard, I think it was Eamon Fennell during the week talking about, kids out in the green and asking them if they watch the match and they're like, what match? Because it's not on TV. And 10-year-old kids aren't going to go in and say, here, I've never even heard of GAA Go, pay for this streaming service. It's just not going to happen. Whereas if they're, switching over from Liverpool against Brentford and the matches, there's another match on straight afterwards, they'll sit and watch it. But you look at Martin Fogarty's position as head of national development, hasn't been replaced. That it is easy to have a pop at the media side of things, but that's one part of what feels like a much bigger failing around hurling in recent years.
Yeah, look, I'm always believing that, like, don't get me wrong now, but a young progressive head going in there to take over hurling, with a modern idea, and even with regarding the marketing and stuff like that, where they get into the grassroots. Like, someone said to me lately, like, and it was a valid point, we lost the summer to Messi, or the winter to Messi. Do you know what I mean? Like, the World Cup was all over TV. It was fantastic, and like I was the romantic of it as well. I'd love to see him winning the World Cup as well. But for young fellas growing up, like, they're all out in the green playing soccer with Messi jerseys on now, and Ronaldo jerseys and stuff like that. Like, and for the likes of the Dublins and stuff like that, if they could see that, like, the passion and the excitement in the Cork and Tipp match last year, like, we need the young fellas to walk around pretending to be the Noel McGraths, pretending to be the Patrick Horgans, the TJ Reeds again, that's what we need. And they need to be doing that in Dublin as well. Like, I met Cian Lynch's parents there, and they were saying that Joe Dean was Cian Lynch's hero growing up, so it's a cross-county thing, like, you know what I mean? So, like, you need a Dublin young fella to turn on the TV, have a look and see Noel McGrath pulling strings around the middle of the field, or Shane Kingston getting the last minute pass to Brian Hayes, rather than a soccer match, as you said, that's being streamed on a channel that most houses have.
I was going to ask, was Donal Óg your hero growing up? But you'd probably say it was one of the Limerick lads.
Yeah, like Declan and Mahal are my two uncles. They would have played, like, so I would have followed that Limerick team growing up. And I was never a goalkeeper until later on in my life. I think it was about 14 when I really started going to goal. So it was always the likes of Declan and Mahal first, likes of Kieran Carey, Gary Kirby and the likes of them, because I would have followed that team. And then obviously coming to Cork, Brian Corcoran took over for me then as well, when I started playing for Cork and stuff. And obviously then I joined the panel with the likes of the man, and I would have learned an awful lot off of Donal Óg and stuff as well. So he kind of became more of a mentor than a hero.
Well, I was going to ask that. What when you were there and as backup to Donal Óg, did you very much feel he was a mentor taking you under his wing?
Yeah, it was funny, like, because he said it to me before. He never saw me as a threat, so he gave me everything he had. And I never was a threat to him, really. It was only for injury that I got in, like, so I would have taken his habits away, yeah, as in his meticulous preparation, and even the way he looked after himself away from training, that when he came to training, it was basic hurling is what he was practicing, because he had his fitness and his other stuff done away from the training field. So, but I would have learned that an awful lot. Like, I'm in with the 20s with Ben O'Connor and Ronan Curran, and I would have learned as much off of them as outfielders as I would have off Donal Óg as a goalkeeper, because I think I was the curse. So Cork won the All-Ireland in 2005, I came in 2006, and they haven't won one since. So I think everyone was glad to see the back of me when I was gone.
Because it is always interesting, that dynamic between goalkeepers where there is a clear number one. And we had Barry Hennessy on the show a couple of months back when he announced he was stepping away from Limerick, and that acceptance he almost had that he wasn't going to get past Nicky Quaid, but still was there an hour before training, preparing the way he was, wanting to push him in every possible manner, knowing actually that him being at his best would ultimately be rewarded with Nicky Quaid being at his best, and him being able to take the satisfaction of winning All Ireland medals at the end of it. Yeah. But when that period is happening, when you're not quite sure whether you're ever going to get that chance, like, were you comfortable being a number two and knowing that your job was to push him to be the best he could be?
I would have loved to be number two. I was number three for most of it. I was like, I was even fighting for number three with Martin Coleman at number two. But yeah, like, I got my chance, and I look like the story's been told. Like, I got my chance at 7 and rattled 5 goals past me. But before that game, I was hoping to go in, keep a clean sheet, put Donal Óg under pressure. But sure, I was delusional at the time. Like, I was only a young fella, and Then obviously, like when he got injured, I got my second debut then, I suppose, years later. But for me, it was just I enjoyed hurling and I loved hurling. I got to travel to training with Ben and Jerry O'Connor, like, you know, and like that was crack in itself, like, you know. And then I was above in the best setup in Cork at the time, so it was either that or give up hurling and go travelling, like, and stuff. So you know, and just look, my career finished out the way it is. I won't bore people and that, like, but I was lucky the way it went. But it was just I enjoyed being there and I enjoyed learning and coming back and performing with Cantortin as well was a reward. Yeah.
You've touched on Cork Tipp quite a few times there from last weekend. Brilliantly entertaining for all those who did get to see it. Almost too entertaining in ways in terms of where these sides are trying to go and get this year. Like, you look at Tipp conceding 419 against Cork after conceding 323 against Ennis. Like, this is very on Tipp, like, it feels, as to how open they are. Like, when you look at that performance, is it fine for maybe getting out of Munster? But if they come up against Limerick and Croke Park or Kilkenny and Croke Park, like, that style of defending is going to see them ripped apart, surely.
But first of all, both managers have done a fantastic job with each team. Okay, Pat Ryan has taken Cork to a team that have now got the confidence to play the style of hurling that they want. Liam Cahill has taken what I would call a broken county. And the one thing I do feel sorry for here is Colin Bonner, because he stepped into the perch of where no one wanted. So in fairness to him, he's done his credit to his county there as well. So I'm not having a hit off him. But just the year itself went poorly. Liam Cahill has come in and now turned them around to one of the favourites to get out of Munster. So for me, it's a huge turn of events for them, and he seemed to have built a good team. But while both managers have done an exceptionally good job, both managers are going away from that game with their heads in their hands in a way, kind of going, right, how do we fix this? You know, like Cork for away, and people in Cork will say that they didn't rob a draw, but they were probably lucky, you know, to get a draw. Tipperary dominated the middle third for a lot of that game. So Cork will be looking to say, how did that happen? How did Tipp out-hurl us in the middle third, and Tipperary look around and go, well, you can't concede 4 goals and expect to get anything. They were lucky, like, if you concede 4 goals in the game, you're lucky to get anything. So they got a point. So both managers will be annoyed, but both managers will be delighted to have 3 points as well, you know. So
where are the fault lines then for Tipp defensively that they're conceding 7 goals in 2 games?
Like Cork, you can't give Cork space. I've said that, like, with the pace they've had. And it was just as if the Tipp defence seemed to be pulled out of place once or twice. But then, like, not many teams have a Shane Kingston or a Robbie O'Flynn who can absolutely turn on the gas, you know, the afterburners and take off. So it was a bit of brilliance on Cork's behalf as well as Tipp's, frailties. They'll probably have to look at not a more pacey backline, but either a more structured backline or a team that can, you know, when they're turned, can go back and recover. But I thought in the middle third, like, I thought that their hurling was just, it was incredible. Their 15-yard strike passing, you know, like, I remember I going to the pitches under 10, like, they'd tell you, the old fashioned, the ball moves faster than the person, and it does, and it still does. And Tipperary moved that ball so quickly around the middle third, where I felt Cork were working hard, but it just Tipp pulled them around. They just played kind of like Rondo style kind of hurling with Noel McGrath, where he was pulling the strings and stuff. And it was funny, Jar asked me last week, who did I think Tipperary or Cork needed to fix? I said Noel McGrath and Jason Ford needed to be tied down to win this game. Jason Ford obviously went off just after scoring a great score, but Noel McGrath, I think, I read that he had 12 assists or something like that in the game. You know, plays to his strengths, like his strengths are his vision and his hands.
And is it just that Cork didn't have the player to get on Noel McGrath then, or was it a tactical thing?
Yeah, do you know what? I think the way hurling's gone, like, it's gone car crash in the middle of the third. Like, you know, you're talking about 2 midfielders, and not 2 midfielders. There's nearly 8 players out in the middle of the field and huge space inside. So, like, when you have a guy of his intelligence, he'll pull off his marker and get into a position where it's just, like, you're talking about hurling skill, but you're also talking about hurling intelligence. He knows where he needs to be. And, you know, it's almost like Clare with Tony Kelly. If you look up and Tony Kelly's free, your job is to give Tony Kelly the ball. I would say it's almost the same with Tipperary. You know, like Roy Keane always spoke about, his job was get the ball back and give it to the better player. Like, if you've Noel McGrath standing in the middle of the field, you want him on the ball, because he's just a magician all his career with a hurley and a ball, like, you know. So I think that, like, Liam Cahill will have huge positive, and even the way he spoke about his team after and the supporters get behind him, he has belief in this team. You know, he's after blending a lot of good young fellas with Brian O'Mara and Gerard O'Connor coming in, and you see Mark Keogh coming off the bench and getting 1-3 or 1-4 for Jason Ford. So he's very happy with his squad, but he admitted himself after, you can't be conceding 4 goals, and they'll look at that and see, right, we've conceded 3 against Clare, wasn't it? 4 against Cork. There's something going on here, you know, and maybe it's a positional switch of a deeper centre back or something like that.
And from Cork's point of view, as you say, lots of green shoots, and in a way you're looking at them going, brilliant character as well, that they just keep coming back, which is what you want to see from a side that's making some progress. But also you got to stop putting yourself in that position.
Yeah, 100%. Look, you summed up there, green shoots, and that's what I think Pat has brought to the public here. People are giving him a bit of patience because he's built such a young, good, strong team. Found a few players, this year as well, and gotten consistency out of those players as well, which is great to see. Like, you have to understand now, you're missing Mark Coleman and Alan Connolly off that team, which are two huge losses. Like, Alan was coming into form. Mark Coleman has been one of the Cork's better performers, and still he's put a team out that has gotten 3 points in the first 2 games. And I'm sure if you knocked on either of those managers' doors at the start of the year and offered them that, they'd have snapped your hands off. I know it's Cork's 2 home games, but like Tipperary play 2 away games and have 3 points on the board, But the second thing is you cannot be allowing leads build up like that, because you can't guarantee you're going to get those goals. Now, Cork looked like they could have had 2 or 3 goals in the first 10 minutes as quick as they had them at the end of the game. Like, the one thing that they have is electrifying pace. And when that hits and when that clicks and there's space there for them, and that's why I think Limerick are so good against Cork, they don't allow that space. When that space is allowed, Cork are one of the best teams to exploit it with their legs. And it was just summed up by Robbie O'Flynn's goal, where it was like, I know he took steps, I understand that, but he was being knocked left, right and centre, but his gears got him away from the tip defence, and then unfortunately pulling his hamstring while in the act of scoring a goal.
It's so interesting the way the Munster table is now set up at the halfway stage. So you have Cork and Tipp on 3 points, you have Limerick and Clare on 2 points, and you have Waterford having lost their first 2 games. But the dynamic of the fixture list now is really interesting. So we have Waterford against Clare this Saturday evening, 6 o'clock at Semple Stadium. But Clare will have played both their games. They'll have finished completely before anyone else plays, because then they go and they play Cork and Ennis at 2 o'clock the following Sunday. So Clare will basically know whether they're through or whether they're out, and whether there's 3 spots available or whether there's just 2 spots available before any of the other teams get to play again. Waterford have offered very little so far. They haven't scored a goal. They've been very defensive. Like, they've had a bit of a break now to try and regroup and reset and find out exactly what they'll do to replace Tadhg de Búrca. Do you think Davy Fitz will have looked at those first couple of games and think it needs to be a reset? We need to come and try something different against Clare on Saturday night?
I was saying to Ger all year during the league, that I just didn't understand what he was doing with the 3 best forwards they had. Mikey Kiley was injured, fair enough. But for me, Mikey Kiley, Stephen Bennett, and Desi Hutchinson need to be closer to goal. When you have 3 goal scoring threats like that, they need to be ever present inside. For me, 2 of them at least, anyway. And then I felt that Caleb Lyons isn't a natural replacement for Tadhg de Búrca. Is he a good centre back? He is an excellent centre back. He's one of the best hurlers in the country. But you look at his attributes, he's an attacking defender, and I wouldn't have him at centre back if you're an attacking defender. Leave him on the wing or play in midfield, and maybe is it a case of throwing Austin Gleeson back there and playing the Tadhg de Búrca role? Like, he's sitting on the bench, something obviously wrong, be it injury or whatever. I know each manager has struggled to find his best position, but build your team around your strengths. For me, it's obviously an interesting side show as well, with Davy playing Clare, so I'm sure it'll be interesting to see whether he has some plans for them as well, or what he'll do with Tony Kelly. Will he send a Corrach Daly or someone after him or something like that? But I think they need to tweak something. I think you're to have to, that's some statement. A Waterford team that hasn't scored a goal. I alluded to it there a while ago. My first game against Waterford was in 2007. Owen Kelly, John Milan, Paul Flynn, Dan Shanahan. And I had 5 goals behind me before I knew where I was. Do you know what I mean? An absolute rip-roaring county for scoring goals.
And with the game, with the way the game has gone now, maybe some of Limerick style counters this, but with how fast it is and how technically skillful the players are and how far the Slither goes and the scores the teams are racking up, can you be a defensive team that wins hurling games?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because if you play against Limerick and you're defensive, they're going to take 35, 40 shots in you. Do you know what I mean? Which they did against Waterford. And they had a lot of wides, and people are giving out about the wides. But Limerick were looking up and seeing a field of bodies in front of them. So shoot, reset, win the puck out, shoot again. You're bound to get 1 or 2 of them. Do you know what I mean? So that was their whole thing there. So I definitely believe, you have to look at it, and it frustrates me. I know why it frustrates me as a Cork man, because I should be happy, but it frustrates me that the excitement in Waterford is gone. You know what I mean? That team coming through, were unreal. And this is, for me, their golden era of players they're going to have for a while again. You've got exceptional players. You've Ballygunner winning Club All Irelands. You've got, and I just between last year and this year, it just seems to be something amiss there. I don't know what it is.
It's a strange thing because you sort of thought that one thing that Davy would bring is that bit of madness back to Waterford, which they do seem to thrive on more than any other hurling county. And it's just been incredibly flat so far. And the fact that they don't have any home advantage, they've had injuries throughout the league, they just haven't had any momentum at all.
Yeah, I actually... Like, if you look at Wexford and Waterford, they've had a lot of injuries, you know what I mean? Like, they've had just, you know, and they're roadblocks, like, as well, you know. But Davies, even his demeanour on the sideline against Cork, like, was just a bit softer. He's not defeated, because I don't think he's a man that's ever defeated, but, like, you asked me a second ago, do we need Offaly back? We do. We certainly don't need Waterford to start going downhill either, you know what I mean? We want to keep them up in the top table as well, but... like John O'Dwyer said it, I watched the Jago thing back, like, and he said after, don't be surprised if Waterford beat Clare. And nothing has showed that they should by the way they've performed, but still they could have a lot to say in this championship on Saturday. You know, Davy could have something, but for me, it's finding that centre back slot to replace. Like, Ty DeBurka to me is almost irreplaceable to Waterford, and maybe having more of an attacking threat up front.
Like, what I think we spoke about this at the start of the championship, that it's 7 years since Ozzie Gleeson sort of made that first breakthrough, and you're still kind of talking about where he fit in. Like, him at number 6 replacing Ty DeBurka, if he's fully fit, if they have him there at 6, what do they do then with Tony Kelly? What is that game plan that actually sees them pull off that shock?
Well, like, to be honest, right, we used to say with Tony Kelly, man mark him and you run the risk of your centre being wide open for goals, or let him off to get man of the match and you hold your backline tight. You know what I mean? Like, it's not letting him off, like, you're letting him off and hoping that the pack pick him up. You know, I spoke to you about midfield there a while ago, like, there's 8 bodies out there. You know, put a little X in his back and know when he crosses the 65 that someone needs to know where he is. No, it's a very difficult mix to do, but you know, it's like the Declan Hannon doesn't follow him and then William O'Donoghue picks him up, you know what I mean, or something like that. Like, but it's a tough mix, or else you just create a +1 with or an extra defender or a sweeper and leave Austin Gleeson sweep and get someone like a Carrick Daly or someone just to tag him all over the field, or whoever is fit enough, for a Caleb Lyons to go after him and be that attacking threat as well out in the middle of the field.
Looking at Clare, so many of our conversations for so many years are always based around Tony Kelly. He's not on the freeze now. Aidan McCarthy has come in. He scored 120 in the 2 games, 13 points of that from the place ball, so he's contributing hugely as well from open play. I was reading an article and Anthony Daly was talking about it. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, because he was talking about how flexible he is and he can play anywhere around that half forward line. In fact, he thinks that long term maybe he could go in at centre back for Clare, that he's such a brilliantly talented hurler. But he was talking about him being a lefty, and you know, generally in the minority. I think it's like 10 to 12% around the world are generally left-handed, but showing, he said, he's a lefty, a natural left hand on top, so difficult to mark because you're not used to coming up against it. With a non-conventional catcher, grip wise, when he does catch it, you'd be like, where's he gone? With a lad you know's right hand on top, he catches with his left, he's nearly always going to go out to his right with the striking hand. With Aidan, he has the option of going either way, and that's a nightmare for fellas to try and close down. And when you look at some of the lefties in the game at the moment, TJ Reid, Conor Whelan, Jake Morris, Keane Lynch, it's a lot of very talented players. I'm just intrigued as to your experience. Were you a lefty or a righty?
So I was left-sided, but I was right-handed. I was right. I was like Tony Kelly. I strike with my left side, but I'd hold the hurling the natural way, the conventional way.
Why?
But there's definitely... do you know what? It was just the way I held my hurling. I was always told, like, do you know, the natural way to hold the hurling is right-hand on top. But then I was left-sided, so I always predominantly as a child. Like, my father tried to get me golfing right-sided, and then after a week he realised, oh, this guy's left-handed. So he had to get me a cut-down four-iron and left-handed, like, you know.
So do you write with your left hand?
No, so like I was describing there before, I'm like Phil Mickelson, and I'm not as good as him by any means, but I write with my right, but if I was to throw a ball, I'd actually throw with my left. So my natural catching hand is my left hand. So it actually suits me in hurling. I prefer to hold the hurling in my right hand anyway, so yeah. I was fortunate enough with those ways.
And the reason Mickelson plays left-handed is that he used to stand in front of his father, who was playing golfer in his own right. And he was right-handed, so he would stand in front of him and he would just copy him, which meant obviously he ended up being left-handed.
Yeah, no, I was just natural. I was just always that way. I just always struck the ball. I'm actually so bad that way. Like my father, my uncles, and my cousins and grandfather used to always try and get me to hit off my right, and they might as well forgot about it. And my leg, I played football minor for Cork as well, and I used my right leg for standing on. After that, that was it. Like I kicked everything off my left, like, you know. So I was always just left side dominant, but it's an excellent point, like, because we had Pat Cronin playing for us in the half forward line for years with Cork, like, and like he was so good in the air. He was naturally good in the air, but he was also so awkward to mark because he was the guy shoving across with his left arm to the defender. So, like, you're at training, 99% of the players you're marking are the conventional right hand on top, as you're saying. And then not only that, you're after naming some, like, TJ, the skill levels of Aidan McCarthy. He's become one of Clare's main men. TJ Reid is obviously one of the best hurlers of all time. And Conor Whelan, like, you know, they're all naturally talented hurlers with that additional extra difficulty of marking them because you're not used to marking them.
Well, you'd assume as well that they find themselves with that little bit more space than right-handed because, as you say, they're jinking the opposite way generally. The players are training against 99% of the time. So suddenly they're approaching all parts of the game in a different way. As a goalkeeper, would it have made much difference to you?
Just targeting puckouts and stuff like that. Like, I played outfield a lot with Cantorca. I played centre back with Cantorca when I was marking a left-hander. I always found that awkward because, see, I was trying to push across with my right arm to catch, you know what I mean, which is pushing onto his left arm, which was holding the hurley as well. Or else you try and play his hand, but that meant you to go to the opposite side. So it's difficult because it's like a boxer. Like, if you have any professional boxer going in to fight a southpaw, like, he brings in southpaw training partners because he's just not used to that, you know what I mean? So, like, it's the same in hurling, like that. If you know you're coming up against a strong left-handed player, like, you'll ask a left-handed player to come underneath with you.
And would you have spoken about that? Would that have been something the coaches would have pointed out and made sure that they were matching people up in training sessions?
Years and years ago, we would have gotten feats about players, which side they struck off and stuff like that. But nowadays, when video is so available to you and stuff like that, it's just easy to watch. Look, who's going to not know the TJ Reid and Conor Whelan hold the hurl in the left hand, you know, if you're going out to mark them. Like, but like, you would definitely have to know because it's which side the defender is marking them on then as well for high ball. I think the main threat is the high ball,
right?
Because how they use themselves under that high ball where you're normally standing on the opposite side of a player, like, but definitely, like, and you can see all of those players you've named have become exceptionally, like, TJ Reid's one of the best fielders of ball in the game. Conor Whelan, for his size, is exceptionally good in the air. Well, that's not just because they're good in the air, it's just because they also have that additional difficulty of being left-handed.
So Clare find themselves on 2 points. They're the one side who can really get to this Limerick team, but it's not going to be much good if you can't find yourself getting out of Munster. We're talking about McCarthy there, Tony Kelly, John Conlon, Shane O'Donnell. Like, we talk about a lot of the same players. Below that, is the next level of Clare player ready to challenge for Munster titles, to finally get one for, what are we, a quarter of a century?
Yeah, fair enough. Like, and, you know, like, you'd always look at, you know, the rest of the team, like, and stuff. And the big thing for me was the change in goalkeepers. Now, Eibhear Quilligan came in the last and did fine and did better, obviously, like, you know, as well. So he'll probably keep getting the number one slot. But, like, they have calibre of player. Like, Peter Duggan coming back was huge. Mark Rogers, for me, coming back was huge as well. Like, I would have worked with Mark down in UL. So they have definitely got the talents to beat him. And the one thing I find about Limerick and Clare is just that rivalry always brings a closeness to the game, be it one team dominating or not. There's always lack of fear on both behalves because they've marked each other in school events, college events, and know each other inside out. They're definitely good enough, yeah, definitely good enough. It's just, like, there's always that performance against Kilkenny in the back of your head last year, you know, is that there or not? Like, and can we blame just John Conlon being out in that? Or is that consistency there where...
Well, it's that thing, like, of, are they overly affected by the loss of certain key players?
Yeah, and like, to be honest, those players you named, they can't afford to lose. Maybe it's Waterford and Tide de Burke as well. Maybe that's as big a deal it is for him, you know. There aren't too many teams that can lose all-star players to that calibre and repair themselves. Limerick obviously can and have done in the past, and we'll see now going forward without Sean Finn, can they? But there aren't many teams that can do it. Like, they'll also look at their frailties against Tipperary and see how they can make sure that doesn't happen again. And was it that just one up against Limerick got them through? Or can they, this is a big game, can they get themselves back up for a Waterford team who are fighting for their lives? Waterford are mathematically not out of this, like, so this is their All-Ireland final to see can they keep this going. If Clare can back it up with another win, yeah, they're good enough to win Munster. It's just, can they do it?
Well, if GA Go have any sense, they'll have a second camera on Davy and Lohan for the entire thing, and you could probably charge 20 quid for the game then, and we'd all be happy enough. Anthony, great stuff as always.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks a million. Thanks very much.
Anthony Nash there. Hurling, it's anyone's game. Off the Ball is teamed up with Senior Hurling Championship sponsors Bord Gáis Energy to uncover stories highlighting the positive impact hurling has had on people's lives. For full competition details, please visit bordgaishenergy.ie/home/BGEGAA.
Hurling on Off the Ball
with Bord Gáis Energy. Hurling, it's anyone's game.